Have you ever looked at a family photo? Really looked? Not just a passing glance, not just a quick smile at the familiar faces, but a deep, lingering stare. At first, everything seems perfect. The careful arrangement, the well-rehearsed smiles, the way everyone stands just so, as if frozen in a moment of togetherness. But if you hold your gaze a little longer, something begins to shift. A stiffness in someone's posture, a distance between two people that feels deliberate, a pair of eyes that don't quite meet the camera, or a smile that doesn't fully reach them. And then the thought creeps in. What if this picture, this apparently innocent snapshot, is hiding something? Something unspoken, something buried so deep that even your family no longer acknowledges it. What if Carl Jung, the famous psychologist and philosopher, was right? What if beneath the surface there lies a secret, one so deeply buried that even your family doesn't speak of it? Carl Jung believed that the past, especially the past that is suppressed, the stories that are left untold, never truly disappears. It lingers, it waits, it finds new ways to surface. And sometimes, if you look closely enough, you can almost see it staring back at you. He held that view that what remains unspoken, what is buried beneath the surface of consciousness, does not simply vanish. Instead, it lingers, an unseen inheritance passed down through generations like an invisible heirloom. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate, he wrote. These unspoken truths, the suppressed and the repressed, form what he called the shadow self, a hidden reservoir of all that we deny, fear, or refuse to acknowledge. But the shadow does not remain locked away. It seeps into gestures, into patterns of behavior, into the silent spaces between words. And often, our family photos unwittingly capture it. A father's distant stare, haunted by wounds never spoken of. A mother's tightened jaw, the weight of past disappointments pressed into the lines of her face. A child's uncertain smile, shaped by burdens they do not yet understand. Jung described this phenomenon as a kind of haunting. The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of its parents. What is left unresolved does not die. It is carried forward, absorbed unknowingly by those who come after. The grief never mourned, the rage never expressed, the love never spoken, all of it echoes through the generations, shaping destinies in ways we scarcely recognize. Look closely at an old photograph, and you might see it. Not just the surface, who stood where, what they wore, how they posed, but the deeper story, the inheritance of the unspoken. The way a father's hand rests lightly on his son's shoulder, uncertain, withholding. The way a grandmother's eyes seem fixed, not on the present, but on a past too painful to revisit. The way a sibling leans slightly away, an unconscious echo of childhood tensions never fully named. We like to think that history is written in books, in stories told and remembered. But it is also written in the body, in expressions half-formed, in habits inherited without question. The shadow self is not merely an individual burden, it is a collective one. And if we do not confront it, if we do not give voice to what was silenced, it will continue to appear again and again, waiting to be seen, waiting to be acknowledged. Have you ever noticed how some family stories never get told? A missing sibling, a relative who disappeared, a hushed-up adoption. These gaps in our family history aren't just forgotten. According to Carl Jung, what is left unsaid doesn't simply vanish. It remains, an intangible legacy, subtly influencing us in ways we may not even notice. Jung spent years working with patients haunted by family secrets. He believed these buried truths formed what he called the generational shadow, the parts of us that remain unspoken, suppressed or repressed. And guess what? They don't stay hidden. Instead, they surface in our anxieties, our fears, even in habits we can't quite explain. Psychologists today back this up with research on generational trauma, showing that unprocessed grief and hidden pain can affect not just one person, but entire family lines. Parents might not talk about past hardships, thinking they're shielding their kids, but those struggles have a way of seeping through, whether in how emotions are handled or not handled, or in deeply ingrained fears and patterns. Jung once called secrets psychic poison. They don't just weigh on the person keeping them, they create invisible walls, pushing people apart. He says, "The maintenance of secrets acts like a psychic poison, which alienates the possessor from the community." When someone carries a secret, especially one tied to guilt, trauma, or shame, it doesn't just sit there passively. It festers, influencing thoughts, behavior, and relationships in ways they may not even realize. The word poison is key here. It suggests something toxic, something that slowly eats away at a person's sense of connection and belonging. What's even more striking is the idea that secrecy creates alienation. We often think keeping things to ourselves is an act of self-preservation or even protection for others. But Jung suggests the opposite. Holding onto secrets can create an invisible barrier between the individual and their community, making true intimacy and trust difficult. Over time, this isolation can lead to feelings of loneliness, anxiety, or even resentment as the weight of the unspoken builds up. On a larger scale, this also applies to families and entire cultures. Collective secrets, like hidden traumas, suppressed histories, or societal taboos, can shape group identities in effective ways. Generational trauma research has shown that when painful truths are buried, they don't disappear. They find other ways to manifest, often through repeated patterns of dysfunction or inherited fears. Jung's insight reminds us that secrecy isn't just personal. It has ripple effects that can stretch far beyond the individual. Healing, then, comes not from concealment, but from openness, dialogue, and the courage to bring hidden truths into the light. Think about it. When one group in the family knows a secret and another doesn't, it creates an unspoken divide. Some feel connected by the shared knowledge, while others sense something is off without understanding why. And when those secrets finally come to light, the fallout can be huge. Anger, betrayal, even lifelong resentment. Take this scenario. An older sibling knows that dad's frequent business trips were actually rehab stints, but the younger sibling is left in the dark. Years later, when the truth finally comes out, the younger sibling feels not just deceived, but gaslit, left questioning their own childhood memories. That kind of betrayal doesn't just disappear, it lingers in the way we trust, or don't trust, people moving forward. And it's not just about the past, it's about what happens next. Families with big secrets often create a culture of secrecy where even unrelated things start getting hidden. Kids grow up in an environment where certain topics are off limits, and before you know it, they carry that habit into their own relationships. They struggle with openness, intimacy, and trust. It's a cycle, and unless someone breaks it, it keeps going. Carl Jung has treated many patients burdened by the weight of secrets, observing how these hidden truths shape their lives and relationships. In the practice of psychotherapy, he explores the complicated and often devastating effects of secrets on the human psyche. Secrets, whether personal failings, hidden transgressions, or unresolved familial issues, serve as barriers not only between individuals, but within the self. Nowhere are these barriers more deeply entrenched than within the family unit, where secrets shape relationships, distort identities, and cast long shadows over generations. Family secrets aren't like personal ones. They don't just belong to one person. They're shared, sometimes knowingly, sometimes in silence. They get passed down like old furniture, carried from one generation to the next, shaping the way families interact without anyone ever really talking about them. These secrets can create invisible walls, pushing family members into roles they didn't choose. Maybe it's the hidden shame of an old affair, a financial disaster, a crime no one speaks of, or a child who was abandoned. Whatever the case, these secrets settle into the fabric of family life, unspoken but always present. Kids pick up on them, even when no one says a word. They learn early on that some topics are off-limits, some memories are fuzzy on purpose, and certain names bring nothing but tense silence and exchanged glances. These secrets often demand a strict performance of normalcy. The family, much like an individual concealing a private shame, works tirelessly to maintain a facade of harmony and respectability. The collective silence is policed through unspoken agreements, sometimes reinforced with guilt or fear. As Jung noted, neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. The refusal to acknowledge painful truths creates emotional distress, passed from one generation to the next. Similarly, James Baldwin observed, "People are trapped in history, and history is trapped in them." Family secrets are history's invisible chains, keeping people bound to the past in ways they don't fully comprehend. What makes family secrets particularly insidious is their endurance across generations. Children inherit their parents' burdens in ways they cannot fully comprehend. A parent's concealed past might manifest as unexplained strictness, bursts of rage, or a deep, unresolved sorrow. The next generation, sensing but not understanding the undercurrents of repression, may either rebel against or replicate the patterns they were raised in. Thus, the cycle continues, the secret taking on a life of its own. Psychotherapy, as Jung suggests, is often where these secrets come to light. Yet, the greatest fear of those who hold them is the moment of revelation, the fear that acknowledgement will shatter the carefully cultivated image of the family. However, paradoxically, the revelation of truth is often the only way to reclaim autonomy from the secret's grip. When we speak our truths, we take away the shame's ability to thrive in the shadows. While the fear of judgment looms large, the reality is that secrets lose their destructive power once spoken, once met with understanding rather than condemnation. In breaking the silence surrounding family secrets, one does not merely expose past transgressions, one liberates future generations from the weight of inherited shame. The act of truth-telling, painful though it may be, restores the possibility of genuine intimacy, of relationships built not on illusion, but on authenticity. And in that authenticity lies healing, the promise of lives no longer dictated by the ghosts of the past, but shaped by the freedom of truth. So what do you do if you're the one who stumbles upon these family ghosts? First, understand that it's not just you. Every family has its shadows. Second, remember that what came before you don't define you. You're not responsible for past choices, but you do get to decide how much power those secrets hold over you. Carl Jung treated many patients burdened by the weight of secrets, observing how these hidden truths shape their lives and relationships. Secrets, whether personal failings, hidden transgressions, or unresolved familial issues, serve as barriers not only between individuals, but within the self. Nowhere are these barriers more deeply entrenched than within the family unit, where secrets shape relationships, distort identities, and cast long shadows over generations. And finally, what about speaking up? Do you air the family's secrets to the world? Not necessarily. But there's a difference between keeping things hidden out of shame and talking about them openly, with compassion and context. Maybe your family never acknowledged an uncle who was gay, but you choose to talk about him with kindness, teaching the next generation, that no one should have to live in hiding. Or perhaps your family buried the story of an ancestor who fled war and changed their identity. But you share it as a way to honor their resilience, not bury the past. Breaking the cycle of secrecy isn't about dumping information on people. It's about making space for truth without shame. Jung believed that when we integrate the shadow, when we bring the hidden into the light, we find healing. And maybe, just maybe, by speaking honestly, we give the next generation a little more freedom to be themselves. The act of keeping secrets isolates the keeper and creates a cycle of deception, where one lie leads to another to maintain the facade. This not only distances the individual from others, but also deepens their own sense of loneliness and estrangement. Jung believed that holding on to secrets prevents individuals from fully exploring their own thoughts, feelings, and experiences, ultimately hindering their journey towards wholeness and individuation. When we suppress our truths, we deny ourselves the opportunity for self-awareness and growth, instead becoming trapped in a state of inner turmoil. Over time, this isolation does not just separate us from others, it fragments our very sense of self, making true connection and understanding even more difficult. When secrecy becomes a pattern, it builds walls between family members, replacing trust with suspicion and emotional distance. The hidden truths fester beneath the surface, widening the gap between individuals who should be sources of support for one another. Jung emphasizes that repression leads to alienation, not only from loved ones, but also from one's true self. Carl Jung observed, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." Secrecy breeds this kind of loneliness, creating an emotional chasm that isolates us not just from others, but from our own true selves. When we suppress our thoughts and feelings, we deny ourselves the chance for self-understanding and meaningful connection. This reveals that isolation is not merely a physical condition, but an emotional and psychological state, often self-imposed through secrecy and repression. When we withhold our thoughts and emotions, whether out of fear, shame, or a desire to maintain control, we sever the bridges that connect us to others. Over time, this silence becomes suffocating, creating an emotional chasm that distances us not only from loved ones, but from our own inner truths. Secrecy, at its core, is a defense mechanism, a way of shielding ourselves from potential judgment or vulnerability. However, Jung suggests that by doing so, we sacrifice a fundamental part of human existence, the ability to share, to be understood, and to form meaningful connections. Without this exchange, loneliness festers, not because we lack companionship, but because the relationships we do have become hollow, devoid of real intimacy. Moreover, Jung's insight points to an exceedingly important role of communication in self-discovery. When we suppress our thoughts and feelings, we do not merely conceal them from others, we also bury them within ourselves, denying ourselves the opportunity for self-reflection and growth. Individuation, the process of becoming whole in Jungian psychology, requires honesty and integration of all aspects of the self. This cannot happen in secrecy. It demands openness, both inwardly and outwardly. We must stop doing this. We must break the cycle of secrecy and isolation before it hardens into permanent estrangement. The negative energy of concealment must be transformed into open, honest communication. Instead of withdrawing, take the first step toward vulnerability. Speak, listen, and create an environment where comfort and trust can flourish. Healing begins when secrecy is replaced with dialogue, and alienation is overcome by genuine connection. Only through honesty can we restore relationships, rediscover ourselves, and move toward true psychological and emotional wholeness. Family secrets don't just disappear, They echo through us, through habits, silence, even the way we love or push others away. Carl Jung believed that what we refuse to face, we unknowingly pass down. So let me ask you, what unspoken truths might be living in your family's story? What silence have you always felt but never had the words for? Drop a comment below, share your story, or just your thoughts. This is a space to break the silence together.